What do you get when you put Jackie, the joke man, Martling and Peter, Bales on a show called More Stand-Up Memories? You get this. Funny memories, funny stories, comedians and jokes you've seen before. So stay a while and laugh with us at least until you're bored.
Stay with us at least until you're bored.
Yeah, you know what? You really should play that song again. I cannot get enough of that crap song, Michael.
I think it's our professional opening, and I love it.
Good.
Welcome, everybody, to Stand Up Memories. Peter Bales here, and that is Jackie the Joke Man Martling right there.
So we're a little late tonight because we had some technical difficulties because we're coming out of Massapequa, which is an old Indian word that means the tech here sucks.
Okay.
But not really. It's not the fault of Strong Island. It's,
it's
trying to communicate between New York and New Jersey, like trying to talk to a girl from New Jersey.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
We have a comedian on coming to us via StreamYard, Teddy Coluca, and we go way back with this guy to 1980. Ladies and gentlemen, Teddy Coluca.
Yeah.
Bring him up. There he is.
There he is.
And he is
I
excited.
have no sound on
the
my
book,
end.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
He can't hear. Well, you know, Jackie, it's nice sitting here and chatting with you.
Well, I wish I could say the same. No,
Well,
it's nice.
Let's set the stage, because when we do get Teddy straightened out, we did gigs in New Jersey when you and I were just starting out in comedy that were less than stellar.
Not only were they less than stellar, they were far away.
They were far away in New Jersey. I wonder what the Throgs Neck Bridge toll was in 1980.
I don't know.
But it mattered. It mattered. And we used to drive to these gigs. One of them was a Chinese restaurant called the Jade Fountain. Do you remember the Jade Fountain?
Yeah, of course.
Oh, looks like Teddy is back.
Can you hear us?
I'm back, but I don't know if I was ever here, but I'm back.
You
All
are
right.
back, and we're talking about back in the day when, before you were an actor, you were doing stand-up comedy and, like us, barely getting through, barely getting by, surviving.
Until I realized I wasn't angry enough to be a stand-up comic. And I realized that pretty quick.
That's interesting. That's actually very profound. Is that true? You've thought about that over the years. You were not angry enough to be a stand-up comedian.
It's true. It's true because, and you guys know this, it's ruthless. And it was ruthless, especially when we crossed the river and went into the city. And, you know, we all did that. You know, we all met Lucian at the comic strip, and we all auditioned for Lucian at the comic strip. And it was just a different world. And I'll tell this story real quick. What really turned me off was I used to do a Roach Motel joke. I'm sure Jackie did a Roach Motel joke, and everybody did a Roach Motel joke. And I remember doing one at the comic strip when I went on one night, and I happened to go on before, and God rest his soul, Hiram Caston. And he had a Roach Motel joke. And when he went on, his Roach Motel joke didn't work. And when he got off stage, he came out to the bar and he ripped into me about me doing my Roach Motel joke before he did his Roach Motel joke. And that
killed the premise. You killed the premise.
Oh, man.
I killed the premise, but what did I know?
That is, you know, I always, back in the early days, that was such crap.
We were featuring your nose way too much in that shot, but now we've got your whole head there.
Yeah, you look
well,
great.
My nose that's really my best feature, so I like to put it out there. It's, you know.
But in those early days, somebody'd say, you know, you can't do a Star Wars joke. I do Star Wars jokes. You know,
right.
Like people would just claim monstrous hunks of the territory, which was just absurd, you know.
A lot of comedians don't understand, didn't then and even now, you cannot claim a topic. You can claim the premise, which is your special take on the topic. You've got something
or your
special.
punchline.
And your punchline, of course, as well. But topics are for everybody, and it's what you deal with when you present your own style on your own joke. So actually, a professional comedian knows that they have to deal with somebody else maybe doing their topic before you do.
You know, I actually posted a letter at the Improv because for a little while everything was this guy stealing, that guy's, and people coming from out of town, they have no idea who's telling what, and there were actual people who would really look at somebody's act and really steal stuff. And I wrote a letter and said, well, let's save the term steal for when somebody's actually stealing, because you can't just say, I did Star Wars, you did Star Wars, you're a thief. And then all of a sudden somebody's a thief. And it took the shine off the people that were really, lifting stuff,
Well, Jackie, do you remember when we did that show in Fort Lee for a while too? And if you remember, Charlie Callis used to come and watch us.
Yes.
Of course, he lived in Fort Lee. He used to sit in the back against the wall, and he would watch us. And then if he liked a joke, he would just shake his head. He would go, and
right.
They were doing that up in the Catskills. He was doing that joke the next weekend, probably up in the Catskills or something. Because again, we didn't have cable TV then, and it was a whole different world.
Nobody knew, there was a story about Alan King sitting in the back of Catch a Rising Star and watching the comics and writing stuff down. And somebody went over and said, you can't just steal these jokes. And he said, I'm Alan King.
Oh my
I do
God.
what I want. And I'm like,
Oh my
that
God.
was such a turnoff,
I remember first going to the Improv.
I had it really weird because I tell jokes. And so, of course, there's no claim on an actual joke. I've been telling old jokes for 50 years. But then one night I saw a comic, a very well-known, he's famous now. And we were at one of those gigs, one of those Jerry Stanley gigs in the middle of nowhere. And he told the joke word for word, exactly the same as me, with exactly the same gestures and the same voices. And to me, that was stealing as much as anything. That was stealing an identity, like what made the joke work. So it's a weird, the whole thing is weird,
Well, it wasn't always the rumors about Robin Williams. Nobody wanted to go on when Robin Williams was in the room. Wasn't that a story that went around for years?
So, well, it was famous because there was a guy named Tim Thomerson, and the reason I know, I actually was on a videotape with him, but Robin Williams, I guess, did a bunch of his stuff at the comedy store, and Tim Thomerson, I guess, grabbed him and put him up against the wall and said, "You do that again, I'm gonna beat the hell out of you."
Yeah.
So those were real stories. But
The excuse was he's
a sponge.
improvising going so fast that he can't distinguish what is
Right, and
original
the
to
stuff
him.
that's going in his head
Yeah,
and out of it,
yeah.
which is believable when you watch how.
Yeah, no, I guess, but still, you're not supposed to steal. And a lot of young comics listen to this podcast. The way to avoid that is when you make your material so personal that somebody else can't.
Well, I
steal
also
it.
tell people steal from Peter Bales because it's not going to work and you're not going to get in trouble.
So Teddy, you're in the clubs. It's the early 80s and you got turned off to it. You want to elaborate on that? What happened?
You know what I think happened to me? I think I saw Danny Aiello on Broadway, and I said to myself, you know what? I can do that. And I just found that I thought that I would just, and I had kids at the time, and driving into the city, to do a 1 o'clock set
That's a big commitment, man.
Well, because you came from Long Island, so you had to do that commuting in, and it just got to be where I started taking some acting classes, and actually, truthfully, someone said to me back then, "Why don't you try to do commercials? They love comics to do commercials." And I met Jackie Pearl, who we probably all met years ago at J. Michael Bloom. And she looked at me and she said, "Kid, you got a great mug." And then I just started booking commercials. And then I went to the Ensemble Studio Theater, took some classes with a couple of different acting teachers. And I just decided that this was a better path for me than stand up.
So what was the time element? Like when I met you, I think it was 1979. It was so long ago.
79, I could tell you, Julia Scotti can tell me the night we went on, because we went on the first night together. Like her first night and my first night was the first open mic we ever did, and it was Memorial Day weekend, 1980, I believe. I believe she said.
And it was a Hal Ennis gig.
Hal Ennis.
And I was hosting, but he wasn't there. So his father had the list of comedians, and he gave it to me.
That was in Fort Lee. That was a night at the New York Club in Fort Lee.
New York. And the piece of paper that I had, that I didn't have my name on it because I was the MC, but I always held on to it because it had Gilbert Gottfried's name spelled wrong, Jerry Seinfeld's name spelled wrong, and Eddie Murphy's name spelled wrong. So I held on to it.
My name spelled wrong.
Right. And now I met you and get reunited with you, and there's your name on there, and your name is spelled wrong, which is a perfect postscript to the whole stupid thing,
Perfect. Perfect.
We should fill in for our audience. He mentioned a wonderful comedian who's been on our podcast, and we love her, Julia Scotti. And you remembering that first time going on stage, her name wasn't Julia Scotti back then.
I don't know if you're allowed to say that. Because I got in trouble for,
For what?
We went on, me and her were on a podcast, on a radio show. We were on John Fugelsang's show together. And I said, yeah, I've known Julia since back when she was Rich Gagliardi. And she said, yeah, it was way back, but yeah, and we're having a great time. And I got these emails from people, you dead named her. There's an actual expression for it. You dead named her.
This is a person who makes her transition a center point of her act.
I'm sure the people that were harassing me had no idea of that. You know what I mean?
And she's proud of it, and she should be.
Of course.
And we're big supporters. Let's put it that way.
She's great. She's great. She's been a friend for 45 years or so.
All right.
And,
Not to mention what a hellhole that gig was. What a first gig for you guys. I mean,
oh wait, we lost you again.
It was a
bad
bad
sound.
No, well, we see you. Can you hear us?
Come on.
We hear you perfectly. All right, I'm going to set up my question while we're getting your sound back.
Is it me? Is it where I am here?
Did you hit mute or something like that?
It's always you.
Hello.
I'm going to walk around and see if this helps.
Okay. Let's get a nice tour of your house.
I have.
You realize they just went around the moon and we can't
Hello?
talk to Jersey?
Are you hearing me?
We are hearing you, yes.
I keep losing the... I'm going to go down by the router. Let's see if this helps.
This is hysterical.
It's a tour of Teddy Coluca's house. For those of you just tuning in, Teddy was the doorman on.
Yes,
he was the doorman on Only Murders in the Building until he was the murder in the building.
I love that.
It was a great episode.
That is on Hulu, and also he had a great role on Blacklist as well. And I want to ask him. We have a lot of people who watch this podcast who want to understand how you transition from stand-up comedy to acting, which he did, starting with commercials. And you know what? We're going to have to make up a fake experience for him.
He just transitioned right the hell off of our podcast.
In his promo material, it says he's got a rubber face, and that just cracks me. He does have one of those. He has one. You're back. Can you hear us?
Hey, that's funny. You just used the phrase rubber face.
Right.
And that's what Jackie Pearl said to me when she met me years ago. She told me I had a rubber face. It's the first time I ever heard that.
Wow.
And my first thought is, because I use old-fashioned language, your face doesn't look anything like a rubber.
I don't know.
It's expressive.
I know. He's got an expressive face.
It works. I don't know. Things are pretty good. I'm happy. I got a good whatever.
But a lot of comics, young comics, want to go from stand-up comedy to acting. You did it, and you started with commercials, and then you got bigger roles. Did you do stage before you got the?
No, I did. I did one Broadway show. I got to do the Ritz on Broadway, which is a very funny show, which I'm proud of that. I did my one Broadway show, but I did plays in every basement, in the city, over the years.
At what point, how long did you fool around with comedy until you said, all right, the hell with that, I'm moving, like a year, 3 years, 5 years?
It was 2 years tops. 2
Yeah,
years.
you got out quick. That's good.
And back in those days, there were the big three. It was the Improv and Catch a Rising Star and the comic strip.
Yeah, there was no Gotham. There was no Boston. There was 3 clubs. Oh, and Rodney, of course.
Right.
But that was a different type of club. That was for the prom people. Used
Right.
to go.
And they were still even doing music at that point sometimes.
And aside from
Again,
that, then it was
Yeah.
the Jerry Stanley gigs and the Hal Ennis gigs out in the, get in your car and drive till you're out of gas. You know what I mean?
I remember once coming out to Long Island to the White House out there. With the Dixon, Richard M. Dixon, was
Richard
that?
M. Dick. So that's very early on. But who was the me and Nelson and Bartlett and Minervini and Myers and Woods and Hawthorne.
These are original Long Island comedians. Now, everybody watching, Richard M. Dixon's was the White House. It was an early comedy club. And he looked exactly like Richard Nixon. I mean, scary.
Well, he looked like him, and then he got himself surgically altered to really look like him.
Look like him. And Nixon was so paranoid that he actually, you remember he had an enemies list, and Richard M. Dixon, who did his impression of Nixon, was actually on the enemies list.
Probably his only claim to fame. Such a character. Oh, my God.
Such a character. So we have so many comics on this show who speak glowingly and nostalgically about their early comedy days. And it's great to have someone on who's angry and bitter about their early comedy days.
Those Hal Ennis gigs were a hoot. Do you remember? You remember that stupid movie he played before the show?
Jimmy Carter. He played that every week.
Every week, and it was always funny. And it's on the internet. If anybody wants to look at it, it's called Jimmy the Sea, and I think it was one of the very first claymation shorts, and it was nominated for a best comedy short for the Oscars. It was actually nominated, So it's just fun.
We're not lying about these dates. If you hear Jimmy Carter, he was in office until January of 1981. And that was a long time ago. Remember Piano Teeth?
Sure. You know what's funny is the night that we were at that place, Fort Lee, New York, when I met you and Julia, and they spelled everybody's name wrong. I drove there with Hawthorne, and we met at Dixon's. That was our meetup place. Sometimes you'd meet at the Improv, but a lot of times we'd actually all meet up at Dixon's and get in one car and go where we're going,
You were the guy that had the car, if I remember. And I remember one night you walked in with Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
You were 16.
Yeah, could be.
Unbelievable, unbelievable fun.
Getting hit by a car and going home with his leg dangling or something like that, And you, like I said, you had the car, and and I don't know what my job was then with Hal was after he'd bring the guys in from New York by bus, but then we would take them back to the George Washington Bridge, to the bus stop there. And that was my job. I drove them back from Paramus to the. Can you hear me again or no?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You just got our attention.
Right before the George Washington Bridge. So that's why I got to know Paul Reiser a little bit. I got to know Carol Lee for a little bit. And it really helped as the years went on, because there were times when I could say to Paul Reiser, hey, remember when you did that bit? And everybody remembered the Chinese restaurant in Paramus. Everybody remembered that.
Of course. That was a classic.
Right. And
you know what? Because there was so many guys, they used like 10 or 12 people on the bill, so you'd meet a lot of people,
Right. And somebody, and Gilbert, they all came through there one time or another, and it helped me later on. Like when I got the audition for Curb Your Enthusiasm years later, I said to Larry, he never came to Jersey, but I said to Larry, I used to watch you with the Improv, and he went, really? And I went, yeah, I used to come in and sit there and watch you. And I did. I watched them all. Larry and Robert Wall, and I mean,
Bob Wall. Wow.
people who I can't even think of any names now, but Ronnie Shakes. You remember Ronnie Shakes?
Right,
And
John DeBellis, and
John, the late Ronnie Shakes was
the
brilliant.
late Ronnie
Everybody
Shakes.
Google these names.
Now, you know what's very funny, because these things keep multiplying. When I knew you were going to come on the show, I sent the link out to a bunch of people, and for the hell of it, I just started CCing everybody. And then I put in the story about that night at the Jade Fountain, and me and Hawthorne and Eddie and his friend Clint, we gave Bill Maher a ride home, and he lived on the Upper West Side, and Hawthorne lost his muffler, blah, blah, blah.
I remember.
And
I remember
so,
you telling. No, I read you tell that story recently somewhere.
so
you
yeah,
wrote
well,
it.
I sent it to you. So that story's out there. So I sent that out to everybody, and I got an email from Rich Scheidner today.
Rich
And he
Scheidner.
said, Jackie, I might be the reason you guys had to give Bill Maher a ride home. So I haven't heard back from him. I said, so you met a Jersey girl and went back to her house and banged her, and Maher was stuck, so he had to beg for a ride home, which just makes total sense.
I bet that's the reason.
That's so fun. It's just fun.
And wasn't he married to Carol Leifer very early on?
Rich Scheidner was for a year?
Yeah,
not that long. Yeah.
Yeah, not that long.
Hard to
That's
believe.
funny.
Jeez.
But let's be honest. But back when you're living it, it was tough. It was dropping guys off at a bus stop, and then they have to take a bus to get home after a one-nighter Jersey gig. How tough?
Yeah, like 40 years really put some rose-colored glasses on these memories.
It does. It's
but think
such
about
fond
it.
memories.
You did 2 shows. I think he paid you $15, and he gave you dinner between the 2 shows. And you Long Island guys, you knew how to get him for the beer too. I remember him saying, "These guys, they drink $400 worth of beer," and whatever the number was back then. But it was a fun place. It was. I always look forward to those Wednesday nights.
Dave Hawthorne was a wild man, and he used to grab himself and squat and do all this stuff. And some guy who was booking the gigs, he said, "You can bring back anybody, just don't bring the guy that grabs his package and drinks a case of Heineken."
remember when I remember him writing the bit. Good to see you. Good to know you. Good to know you. Good to blow you. I watched him do that one night off the top of his head, and then all of a sudden it was in his bit. It was in his part of his act, and I learned a lot too, just watching people back then. As an actor too, I learned a lot as the years went on. But you remember Danny Curtis? Jackie?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was the MC at Rodney's. He's still around. He's still here in Jersey, and we do an open mic every once in a while in a library. And he comes and he does his old shtick stuff. He's got to be almost 90. And
nobody goes away. It's so amazing. You run into people. Yeah, you're still doing it. You're still doing it. The people that aren't doing it are the ones that are dead.
And to the comics, the young comics who are watching this podcast, you're starting out. It's difficult. How are you going to get through the night? How are you going to get through the week? You are making friends. You are making memories that will last for a lifetime.
Lifelong. It's like being in a foxhole in the war, which is kind of like, that's kind of disparaging to the soldiers, but it's the same idea. Everybody's suffering equally.
The guys people you broke in with, you're friends for the rest of your life. Go ahead.
That's true. And the actors, that's what I miss more than anything, is going into an audition and just hanging out with everybody in the room, and the friends that I've made over the last 40 years. And it's just like we don't see each other anymore. And it's sad because, thank God for social media, because you can stay in touch. But I made some great friendships with people who were rivals, over the years. And, really the good ones, you realize that it's not my decision. It's not your decision. It's somebody else's decision. So let's not let it, get between us at all. And with actors, I've always said an actor is a lot more accommodating than a comic. I used to say, like an actor will say to you, "Hey, there's an audition in there. You're really right for it. You should go." I don't know if a
Right.
comic would say the same thing.
Right. If
I
a comic
get
sees
that.
you coming, he hides the phone number of the club. You know, I mean, there's one gig and two comics. Somebody's not getting the gig, you know,
Right.
and it's that's the simple math about the whole
But we're
thing.
always going to ask who books that. We're,
Yes,
we're
of
never
course.
going to stop that. So tell us, we got to ask you, you know, it's exciting to be on as an actor. Only Murders in the Building. Was that fun?
It was a great 5 years. Best job I ever had. Steve, Marty, Selena. If anybody has an ego, they leave it at the door. When I first got the job, I thought I was going to be just standing there saying, "Have a nice day," and people coming and going. And then around season 2, right after the writer's strike, they sent me a note. John Hoffman, the showrunner, sent me a note and said, "We're back in the writer's room, and Lester, my character, is on our mind." I had no idea what he meant, but I found out later on it meant they were killing me. But but being killed on that show might be
that's such an honor. You know, it's like crazy.
I did a bit with Steve the last season that was probably the funniest bit I've ever been on television, and I'm dead in a casket. So,
and they accused you of overacting. That's so ironic. How could that be?
Yeah.
Hey, man, Blacklist is such a fun show.
Yeah, they shot a lot in my hometown in Bayville, out where I live on Long Island. They shot a lot of stuff out there.
Spada, I can't tell you what a terrific person he was to me. He treated me like we went to kindergarten together from the first day he met me. I don't know why. Maybe I was the old guy. I don't know what it was, but he took care of me. He always made sure, because I had a lot of crazy things to do on that show. I had an oxygen tank for 10 seasons. I worked with all kinds of animals. Probably the worst being a boa constrictor around my neck when I had to do a scene with him, a real one. I
Jesus.
mean, but it was, I just can't tell you. And they wrote me the best lines in the world. And who would have thought? I mean, when we were doing that stand-up 40 whatever years ago, who would have thought that, I didn't think that I would
Nobody knew where anybody was going, if anybody was going. Nobody had a real plan. Let's get famous.
You had an agent and you audition and you get these roles, right? I mean, I'm simplifying, but I think you look like you have a rubber face. You can play these parts, right?
I thought you were going to say you look like a doorman, and I don't want you insulting.
I look like a doorman. I look like a toll collector. I remember one time years ago, I was at a party and I was doing a lot of commercials at the time, and somebody was looking at me. And finally they came over to me, and I thought they knew who I was from television. And the guy says, Mary or whoever was having the party told me who you were. He said, but you know what? He says, I thought you were the guy I give my quarter to at the toll booth every morning, and you didn't say hello to me.
That's great.
I love it. Love it. Teddy, sit tight. I got to do a couple plugs here.
Go ahead.
Boy.
We are at a place called Paradise Studios in Massapequa. If you have any podcasting needs, video needs, audio needs, this is the place to come. Paradise Studios. And our podcast is on a podcasting network called Strong Island Television. Strong Island Television. Bobby is the man to contact. And this is exciting. I'm announcing something exciting that is new. The Long Island Podcasting School. If you're an author, if you're a performer, if you're a producer, I don't care who you are, and you're wondering, how do I do podcasting right? How do I get started? The Long Island Podcasting.
That is a terrific idea.
It is a great idea. Call Paradise Studios. Get Bobby. He'll fill you in, and it would be well worth your time.
All right. Well, while you're plugging, I'm going tomorrow morning at the crack of ass. I'm going to Estero, Florida. I'm working a place called Venturinos in Estero, Florida. I had never heard of Venturinos, but did you ever hear of a town called Estero?
Estero, no.
Well, it's on the West Coast, and I'm looking forward to it very, very much. So I just wanted to give the guy a plug.
It's on the level of the Jade Fountain in Fort
Yeah,
Wayne.
it's a Jade Fountain with palm trees.
All right.
How could you insult me like that?
I can't do it.
It's nowhere near as nice as the Jade.
You know, Teddy, you are great. Yeah, you know what? And we roll with the punches, and it is so. It's funny to me that to get bandwidth, you go down into your base. We've never had somebody go down into their basement, and in the background we see you have a dungeon and all of these straps hanging on the wall.
As Rodney would say, you're lower physically and socially.
There you go. Teddy, thank you for the stand-up
We
memories,
got to
man.
go. We'll do it again.
Thank
Let's
you,
stay
guys.
in
I
touch.
appreciate it. I'm glad we're all here. Take care.
Hey, you too, man.
Thanks, Ted.
See you next time.
So long.
And everybody, we will see you next time. Jackie the Joke Man, Martling, Peter Bales.
And Jessica Moore, my friend who turned me back on to Teddy Coluca.
That's
Yes, she's
such
a nice
wonderful
kid.
thing.
Great
Nice
girl.
girl.
Great.
All right.
Great memories,
Bye, guys.
Teddy.
Thank
See you next
you.
time, everybody.
Bye-bye.